Hey, Salvador Briggman here. Welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified YouTube channel. And one of the categories that's really popular with Kickstarter is actually making a card game. You know, also making tabletop games and that kind of stuff, making miniatures. Specifically with this video, I want to talk about creating an entirely new card game, right? How do you design it? How do you get started with it? This is going to be going in depth into the step-by-step process that I would apply for setting up a new game. Hope you enjoy it. It's coming up right after this. Okay, so let's get right into it. Again, my name is Sal. When it comes to this, creating a card game is definitely something that literally anyone out there can do. If you have any doubts of whether or not you can actually make a card game, I assure you, you can do it. The only thing that's required is desire and perseverance, right? Those are the only two things. When it comes to this, the first thing is going to be the gameplay, and this is probably the area that's most difficult to advise on because games are so different, right? And there is kind of a strategy behind gameplay, making sure that when you're playing it, that it's fun, that people don't win too easily, that it's also not too hard to come out with a winning scenario, that there are enough winning scenarios to constitute like a total playing session, right? So there's a lot that goes into gameplay. And honestly, the best way to get started with this is just to examine some of the games that you already like playing. Literally, take it from a scientific approach, right? So when you're doing a scientific approach, you always are going to have a field journal, right? A field journal in order to record notes, observations, and thoughts as you're going out there and as you're trying to accomplish or conduct an experiment. So what you want to do is you want to take a couple of the games that you know and love and just pay attention to the moments in the game that you feel an emotional high. Pay attention to the times in the game where it's like your face lights up, where you really enjoy it, or you feel anxious, or you feel nervous, or you feel competitive, right? Pay attention to the emotions that you are feeling as you are playing a card game and write them down and what caused those different emotions, because that's all that gameplay is. All that gameplay is with other people, emotional bonding and having an experience. So let's just say a certain gameplay is going around and then something happens and like a wild card comes into effect and the rules change and everyone's like, oh no, but like it's kind of fun, right? That surprise element is a part of many different card games that are out there, and you can introduce that into your own game. So the first step that I have for you is to select some of those games, to do an auditing process, and to write down the different emotions that you're feeling as you're playing the game, how you think about it, when you start to get competitive, when it starts to get a little bit dull, and how long you typically are playing that game for. So some games you might play Go Fish, right, for like a couple of rounds, or maybe like for 30 minutes if you're trying to kill time. Other games you're playing and it's like 3 hours later, right? So it's really different, and it's important for you to understand the length of a gameplay session, the speed of one particular hand or one particular turn or that kind of thing, and sort of the frequency as you go through that. So if you're like playing Uno, for example, you might play one, then you play another, then you play another, and you can see the session over time. So make sure you take notes on the gameplay and think a little bit about how you are going to incorporate that into your own. The next step is to examine the resources that you will need. So resources can go beyond simple cards. You could have dice, you could have chips, you could have different ways of keeping score or pointers, or different cards that require you to spin a wheel, right? There are so many ways in which you can get involved in the game. And I want you to think a little bit about what are some of the ways that could enhance the game just aside from bread and butter using cards in order to keep track of things and maybe having like a point tally on a scrap piece of paper or a napkin, right? Something like that. Think a little bit about that. Now, not every game needs it, but you might find that for your particular genre or your particular style of game, that it would really be very well suited to have some of these external tools or external ways of keeping score, or kind of make the game have more thematic fun and be a little bit more enjoyable. A lot of the games out there might incorporate cards as part of the game, but you might realize, and this is a big part of just the whole process, you might actually realize that maybe I actually don't want to create a card game. I want to have cards be a part of a larger tabletop game. So like one of the games I used to love to play was Life when I was growing up. And cards are a part of that game, but they're not the whole part. Same thing with Monopoly. Cards are a part of it, but there's a much larger part of that when it comes to the board and pieces and miniatures. So it's also a discovery process of the type of project that you want to make, the type of game that you want to play. This YouTube video is sponsored by The Gadget Flow. The Gadget Flow reaches over 28 million people, and they've been around since 2012. They are Indiegogo and Kickstarter experts. They featured over 5,000 crowdfunding campaigns. If you have a tech or design campaign, it is a great platform to generate awareness and get backers. Check them out at thegadgetflow.com/submit and list your project today. The next is to actually test it out and to test out gameplay with people that are around you. You don't need professional cards to be able to do this. You could literally just use index cards. You can write these out. You can print these out. It's really easy to do. And you want to test gameplay and you want to get feedback and pay attention to the times when there's a lull in the game, times when there's a static, times when people are having a good time, they're not having a good time. It's all about having an emotional experience. And kind of like with a movie, it would not be fun to watch a movie where the bad guy just gets killed in the first 30 minutes, right? Where the bad guy and the hero start fighting within the first 30 minutes and then that's it, and the hero wins and that's the end of the story. The reason why movies and also books and stories are so freaking interesting is because it develops over time. And we don't want a movie that only lasts 30 minutes. We want a movie that takes us on a roller coaster ride over the course of 2 hours or even 3 hours. I've watched movies that are 4 hours long. We want an entire roller coaster ride of emotions. And what that almost does is it gives us kind of like an escape from our normal life. Because most people in normal life, they go to a cubicle, they go to the job, right? They go to coffee with their friends, maybe go out a little bit afterwards. But in general, it's pretty boring. So we seek out entertainment in order to enliven the mind and to feel emotions that normally on an everyday basis we don't feel, and as well to feel them in a safe environment. So like with movies, if you're watching a horror movie, you're feeling super scared, you're not usually gonna feel that way in a normal 9-to-5 job. Or your action-packed movie, you're like excited, right? You're not gonna feel that way normally on a day-to-day basis. The same thing goes with games. When you're playing the game, your emotions go up and down, up and down, up and down with the different turns that are happening. So you might feel defeated and you might feel elated in the span of a minute, right? And the more that your emotions go up and down, the better the gameplay is and the more addictive it can be. Almost kind of like with a rat pulling a lever. They've done studies where one example, you have a rat who's pulling a lever and he gets a little pellet, right? Other studies, it's almost a variable reward where the rat pulls the lever, there's a reward. Pulls the lever, there isn't a reward. Pulls the lever, there is a reward. It's a variable reward. And the more that you can kind of bake a little bit of those addictive elements into a game, the more likely people are going to want to keep playing it and playing it and playing it for that kind of emotional fun experience. After you've play tested, you got some good gameplay down, next is time to kind of take it to the next step. So the next step is, how do we take what you've been having in your head or having on some rudimentary cards and actually bring that into the world? How do we create something physical that with beautiful artwork that has high quality cards? How do we assemble that into the modern world, right? So the first is the artwork. The artwork is the most important because that kind of informs the rest of the gameplay, and you need an artist if you want to have a professional looking game. So the first part is going to be assembling artists, and you can do this very easily using Excel. You can just create a list of different artists out there, approach them, give them an idea of your game, give them an idea of the budget, get a sense of how long it might take them to work on your project. Artwork is so integral to a game because it really does create that fully fleshed out experience. And as a creator, it's actually what gives you the confidence to be able to sell the game, to promote it, to talk about it to your friends because you know it's good. Therefore, you're more likely to tell other people about it. If you don't feel good about the artwork of your game, it feels like you're pushing like kind of a dicey product. For example, the book I wrote, Kickstarter Launch Formula, this is a seminal piece. This is a complete step-by-step blueprint for launching a Kickstarter campaign, and why I feel so comfortable promoting it to you right now is I wrote the heck out of that thing. There's so much value chalked in that little tiny book that it's literally going to change your life. Like, it will change your life as it relates to launching a product on Kickstarter, and that's why I am so comfortable promoting it, is because I put so much hard work into that. So if you're interested, go and check that out on Amazon or on Audible. Really great. And it's really been like a mainstay for me going back to that book, even continuing to visit different pieces of that. So aside from that, for you, you got to make sure you have the artwork down. Once you have the artwork down, then you can progress into some of these other stages. So for example, deciding who's going to make the game, what are the materials that you're going to use, you're looking into the Game Crafter or some of these other sites out there in order to figure out, okay, now how we're going to produce not just one of these, but also multiple. And in addition, how are we going to box this thing up and make it look really nice? What is the box going to look like? What is it going to be made out of? What are the dimensions? What's the weight going to be? That kind of stuff, so you can figure out fulfillment later on. When you're checking off all these items, you're like, okay, I did this, I did this, I did this. What's going to end up happening is you're going to come to a realization, and that realization is, wow, I need a bunch of funding to get this thing off the ground the way that I really want it to, right? And when you get to that point, you should immediately think Kickstarter, 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 Kickstarter. Kickstarter is your route to be able to secure that funding, but also players for the game. This is the surefire way to not only get funding for the game, to not only get people following you, to building a massive crowd out of that, but to also coalesce the project. If it's just you or you have a team that's working with you, you need some kind of a project deadline, or otherwise you're gonna be puttering around for years and never get this game out there. A Kickstarter campaign is almost like a business boot camp, and it will give you so much credibility when you actually have a successful campaign that this is really the part when you're going to want to either engage a coach like myself and to help you do this and execute on this, to look into an online course of some kind, to watch more of the videos that I have out there, or to hire a marketing company, or to hire someone like myself who can take over the entire project for you. The Kickstarter campaign is what's going to give you an infusion of cash where you can take this game from just being kind of like a prototype, just something that's like fun to play, to actually being something you're selling regularly, that you can show off out there. You can have a website, you can have an online store, or you can have someone else, produce this in mass quantity, or you can get this done, different places, etc. But this is really the point that's kind of like the make or break to me, and an extreme leverage point as well, because you're getting so much critical feedback about the game in a positive way. And it's that moment of validation, that moment of realization, like, wow, if I actually focused on this, I could make a business out of it. And I'm not just saying that, because if you go into the archives of my podcast, we have more than 200 episodes I produced on the podcast. You can see repeatedly people who have gone from nothing to having 6 Kickstarter campaigns, having 10 Kickstarter campaigns of different card games, different board games that they produced over the years. So it really is a launch mechanism. Once you get this down, it is a repeatable, systematic process that you can use to fund multiple games in the future. There's so much that I could share with you right now, man, but I kind of wanted to just at least give you some of those initial steps. Also, if you're getting to the fulfillment side, go and check out Fulfill Right. They have a free checklist when it comes to talking about and understanding the fulfillment and shipping side of the whole game business and also the whole e-commerce business. Go and check that link out down below for the fulfillment checklist. Really good, high quality. It's also free. But in addition, if you want to, sort of get my one-on-one consultation and you want us to go in depth into an intensive coaching call, you can book a one-on-one call with me. Give me a thumbs up on this video if you liked it. We also got some other content there when it comes to description. So go and look at the description of this YouTube video for kind of the next place to go after watching and digesting this content and taking a little bit of notes. But finally, if you want more stuff like this, my name is Salvador Briggman. Come subscribe to this channel. I put out content pretty regularly. Would love to have you comment on one of the videos. Maybe if you have a question, I'll try to get back to you. But thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next time.